Hi, before I tell you who I am, let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so much you thought they'd protect you even from the worst?
I did.
But the person I feared most wasn't a stranger. She was family. She smiled at me in front of guests and shattered my world when no one was looking. She didn't just break my trust, she nearly broke my skull. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about standing up when silence becomes dangerous. And believe me, the day she accused me of stealing her $12,000 Rolex was just the beginning. My name is Madison, and I'm 30 years old. I used to believe that love could solve anything, that if you were kind, patient, and honest, everything else would fall into place. For a long time, I lived by that belief, always trying to be the peacemaker, the problem solver, the woman who didn't complain even when things felt unfair. But life has a way of testing your beliefs. It puts you in situations where silence doesn't protect you. It only delays the damage.
That's what happened to me.
I married a man I truly love, Ryan. We've been together for a little over 2 years, and though it sounds cliché, he really is the most decent man I've ever met. He listens, he supports, he believes in me. We met through his sister Julia, who was my coworker at the time. She and I hit it off instantly. Same coffee order, same obsession with office supplies, same dark sense of humor. One evening after work, she said, "You have to meet my brother. He's the only man I trust with my Netflix password." That's when Ryan came into my life. And for the most part, he was everything Julia promised, respectful, grounded, and so gentle. He wasn't flashy or smooth. He was real. He made me feel safe, in a way I hadn't felt in years. We dated for a year before getting married. The wedding was modest but beautiful, held in a garden behind Julia's home. Ryan and I said our vows under a canopy of string lights and cherry blossoms. It should have been perfect, but there was one dark cloud that never moved, no matter how brightly we smiled. Her name was Janet, Ryan's mother. From the day we met, she made it clear I wasn't good enough. At our first dinner together, she asked where I got my shoes and then wrinkled her nose when I said they were from a mid-range department store. She once called me simple, not directly to my face, but loud enough for me to hear when I stepped into the next room. She was the kind of woman who didn't need to yell to be cruel. She stabbed with subtleties. And Ryan? He noticed, but he struggled with confrontation, especially when it came to his mother. Janet was widowed, and Ryan was her only child. She saw him as her emotional lifeline. She had invested everything into him. And now, here I was, taking her place. She didn't say that out loud, but I felt it in every glare, every side comment, every time she called our home, your little apartment. Still, I tried. I smiled when she criticized. I complimented her taste in art, her wine collection, her antique dishes. I volunteered to host holidays, to include her in every plan. I wanted peace. I thought if I gave her enough time, enough kindness, she'd soften. She didn't. Not at our wedding, where she accused me of disrespecting her because the seating chart didn't place her in view of the cake. Not after the wedding, when she referred to me as that girl in front of her friends. And certainly not when we bought our house, a small 2-bedroom place with chipped paint and charm. She said it looked like a starter home someone never upgraded from. But I held it all in for Ryan, for love, for hope. I didn't know then that love wasn't enough to survive what she was planning. It was 6 days before our anniversary when Julia stopped by unannounced. She looked a little winded, like she'd hurried to get to me. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she wore her usual no-nonsense blazer and sneakers combo. In her hand was a small notepad and a bag of lemon scones. "Hey," she said, walking straight into the kitchen like she always did. "We need to talk." That alone put me on edge. Julia never used that tone unless something was wrong. I set down the box of folded napkins I was organizing and gave her my full attention. "Okay, what happened?" She exhaled and rubbed her temples. "It's Mom. She's planning something for the party." I blinked. Planning what? "I overheard her on the phone with Aunt Marlene last night," she said, and I quote, "I'm going to make that girl wish she never married my son." My stomach clenched. That could mean anything. Julia shook her head. Not this time. She asked me where you keep your closet keys. She wanted to know if there were any blind spots in your house. Madison, I think she's planning to accuse you of something. I leaned against the counter, suddenly short of breath. Like what? I don't know. But I don't trust her. And after everything she's done, neither should you. It wasn't that I didn't believe Julia, I did. I had seen Janet's manipulative ways in action many times before. But this felt heavier. More dangerous. Still, I didn't want to tell Ryan. It's not that I didn't trust him. I did. But part of me needed him to see her, truly see her, without my words clouding the moment. If Janet pulled something, I wanted her exposed in front of everyone. No denial. No spin. No guilt trips. I'll be careful, I told Julia. Thank you for telling me. We hugged, and she left soon after. But I couldn't shake the weight in my chest. The rest of the week, I was on edge. I checked the hallway camera system twice. I locked our bedroom whenever I left. I even made sure every bag and drawer was empty the night before the party. Still, a voice inside me whispered, "It won't be enough." Ryan was excited about the brunch. He invited family, made a playlist, even arranged for a local baker to make mini fruit tarts. His heart was in it. Mine was somewhere between anxiety and dread. But I stayed calm on the surface. I smiled, I planned, I hosted, because I refused to let Janet ruin this. At least not without exposing her for good. The morning of our anniversary brunch was sunny and crisp, with a soft breeze that made the hanging lanterns sway gently above the backyard tables. I had spent the early hours arranging flowers, setting out silverware, and double-checking the dessert table. Ryan was outside stringing lights, with that boyish enthusiasm I'd always loved. Everything looked beautiful, peaceful, but my stomach was in knots. Guests began arriving around noon. Laughter floated through the yard, mingling with the soft playlist we had curated together the night before. Cousins clinked glasses, Julia helped pass around appetizers, and my old coworker Liz hugged me tightly, saying, "You always host the coziest gatherings." I smiled, trying to mean it. Then she arrived. Janet. She wore a pale blue silk dress and pearls so large they looked cartoonish. Her face carried that familiar smile, tight-lipped, practiced, polite enough to fool those who didn't know her. But I knew. I always knew. She kissed Ryan's cheek with forced affection, gave Julia a quick nod, and greeted me like a stranger at a business mixer. "Happy anniversary," she said flatly. "Thank you," I replied, just as neutral. The brunch went on. Ryan gave a short speech thanking everyone for being part of our journey. I stood beside him, smiling for photos, receiving hugs. I kept checking the hallway windows, half expecting to see Janet sneaking down the corridor like some suburban spy. Then, as I walked back inside to grab more lemonade from the kitchen, I heard her heels behind me. I turned slowly. There she was. "Lovely setup," she said, glancing around.
Simple.
"Like you." I swallowed hard. "Can I help you with something?" She leaned in slightly, her voice soft and sharp. "You think Ryan really sees who you are? You think that ring on your finger makes you family? I've seen gold diggers with better manners." I blinked, too stunned to speak. Janet smiled. "You're not fooling anyone, Madison. You never were." And then she turned and walked out of the room like she hadn't just dropped a verbal grenade. I took a deep breath and forced myself to keep going. I wasn't going to break, not now. But the quiet before the storm never lasts long. About 10 minutes later, just as I was refilling glasses at the drink station, Janet's voice pierced the air like a fire alarm. "My watch," she shrieked. "My Rolex, it's gone." Everyone turned. The music stopped. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Janet stood in the center of the patio, holding her open handbag. It was right here, my $12,000 Rolex watch. "Someone has taken it." Gasps rippled through the guests. Ryan stepped forward. "Mom, are you sure? Maybe you left it." "I did not," she barked. "And you know who was near my bag? Her." She pointed at me with the same finger she once used to stir tea with elegance. I froze. She's always admired it. Janet continued, turning to the crowd. She's made comments. I saw her near the gift table. Who else would be desperate enough to take it? The guests fell into stunned silence. Julia stood up, looking horrified. Ryan looked like someone had poured ice water down his back. And I
felt something shift inside me.
I had held my tongue long enough. The silence was deafening. My hands were trembling, but I forced them to remain at my sides. I looked directly at Janet, her eyes blazing with faux righteousness. The guests were watching, waiting to see how I would respond, whether I would cry, deny, or walk away in shame. But I had had enough. I stepped forward, meeting her gaze head-on, and said calmly but firmly, I know you planted that watch in my closet. You wanted to ruin my anniversary just because you can't stand losing control over your son. Gasps echoed through the yard. Janet's face went pale, then red. Her mouth opened slightly, then snapped shut again. You could feel the electricity shift in the air. Her public performance had cracked, and behind the crack was something far more dangerous. Rage. You ungrateful little, she started, but I cut her off. You tried to humiliate me in front of my family, my friends. But it's not going to work. Everyone is going to see who you really are. Julia stood, her mouth slightly open in shock. Ryan was frozen in place, staring between his mother and me, his loyalty being pulled like a rope between two hands. And then it happened. Janet's eyes darted toward the table beside her, the decorative console we had set up for the cake and centerpiece. Sitting atop, it was a marble statue, a sleek replica of a Greek goddess holding a laurel wreath. It wasn't heavy enough to be called a weapon, but it was heavy enough to hurt. And Janet, in full view of everyone, grabbed it. I barely had time to flinch before she lifted the statue and slammed it down onto the side of my head. There was a scream, maybe mine, maybe someone else's, and then pain. Hot, white, flashing pain. I collapsed onto the brick patio, the world spinning around me. I could hear Ryan shouting, people yelling, chairs being pushed aside. Blood trickled down the side of my face, warm and sticky. My vision swam. Madison. I heard Julia cry. She hit her, someone screamed. She hit her in the head. I saw shadows, figures rushing, and then everything went dark. The next thing I knew, I was blinking up at a cloudy sky, a paramedic kneeling over me, shining a light into my eyes. She's conscious, he said. We've got bleeding on the scalp. Possible concussion. Everything was muffled, like I was underwater. But one sound pierced through it all. Ryan's voice, frantic and close. I'm right here. I'm not leaving you, Madison. Then, through the fog of pain, I heard him shout, call the police. Now. The ambulance pulled into the driveway with a low rumble, its siren now silent, but the flashing lights still painting the lawn in streaks of red and blue. I was sitting upright on the gurney, a bandage pressed to the side of my head, blood soaked into the collar of my blouse. My ears were ringing. My body ached. But my mind was clear. Janet had done it. And she'd done it in front of everyone. Officer Grant stepped out of the police cruiser, tall and calm with a notepad in one hand and a steady gaze. A young female officer followed behind him, already collecting statements from the guests. Ryan stood beside me, arms crossed tightly over his chest, his jaw clenched. His eyes hadn't left me since I'd woken up in the yard. I'm Officer Grant, the officer said to me, crouching slightly to meet my eyes. We've been told your mother-in-law struck you in the head. Is that correct? I nodded slowly, with a marble statue. It's still on the table. He turned to another officer. Bag that as evidence. Then he looked back at me. Do you know why she attacked you? She accused me of stealing her $12,000 Rolex, I said. And I called her out for planting it in my closet. Planting it? He raised an eyebrow. She's done things like this before. Always sneaky. Always careful. But this time, we have security cameras. Our hallway cameras cover the bedroom doors. Ryan stepped forward. I can pull up the footage. Right now. While Officer Grant walked off with Ryan to review the footage on his phone, Julia brought me a bottle of water and knelt beside my chair. She's done, she whispered. Everyone saw it.
There's no saving her this time.
Across the yard, Janet stood with her arms folded, flanked by 2 officers. She looked smaller now, her usual poise gone. But her mouth was still running. "She provoked me," she was saying. "She humiliated me in front of my family. I just reacted." Officer Grant returned moments later, his face unreadable. "I've seen enough," he said. He turned to Janet. "Janet Williams, you are under arrest for assault with a dangerous object, false accusation, and attempted framing. You have the right to remain silent." "No, wait," Janet began, backing away slightly. "Mom," Ryan interrupted coldly, "don't." The officers cuffed her as the guests looked on, stunned. No one moved to stop it. No one spoke in her defense. The woman who had controlled every room she walked into for decades had finally lost her power. As she was led to the police car, she turned to me, tears suddenly streaming down her face. "Madison, please. I'm your family." I didn't reply. I simply turned away. Because she wasn't my family anymore. Inside the ambulance, the paramedics checked my vitals one last time before we rolled out. Ryan sat beside me, holding my hand, silent and shaken. "We're going to get through this," he said softly. "I swear." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in a long time, I believed him. The hospital room was quiet, sterile, and cold. A dull ache pulsed behind my eyes, and the stitches on my scalp tugged with every movement. The doctor had told me the blow hadn't fractured my skull, but the bruising and laceration were deep. I was lucky, they said. Lucky. It didn't feel like luck. It felt like the result of surviving someone else's bitterness. Ryan hadn't left my side since the ambulance doors closed. He stood by me during the x-rays, held my hand when they cleaned the wound, and sat in the stiff hospital chair while I drifted in and out of sleep. Later that night, when the nurse left us alone, I turned to him. "I want to press charges," I said, my voice quiet but firm. He nodded instantly. "You should. You have to. I don't want this swept under the rug. I don't want anyone calling this a family matter. It's not. It's assault. It's defamation. She didn't just hurt me physically. She tried to destroy my character in front of everyone." Ryan reached for my hand. "You don't need to explain it to me, Madison. I'm with you. Every step." The next morning, Officer Grant visited the hospital to take my formal statement. I told him everything, from Julia's warning, to the false accusation, to the attack. He nodded slowly, taking notes. "She's being charged with felony assault and false reporting," he confirmed. "You'll be contacted by the DA's office soon. Do you wish to testify in court?" "Yes," I said. "Absolutely." A few weeks later, the court proceedings began. Janet pleaded not guilty, her lawyer attempting to spin the story as an emotional outburst, a heated misunderstanding between in-laws. But the footage told the truth. Crystal clear. The video showed Janet entering our home before the party, placing the Rolex in my closet, then later, with full intention, striking me with the marble statue. There were gasps in the courtroom when the footage played. Julia testified. Ryan testified. Even our guests who had witnessed the scene offered written statements. I sat through it all, calm, composed, unwavering. And finally, Judge Miller delivered the sentence. Given the premeditated nature of the false accusation and the violent physical attack with intent to cause harm, the court sentences Janet Williams to 4 years in state prison, without the possibility of early parole. The courtroom was silent. Janet sat still, stunned. There were no tears this time, just silence. As the officers led her away, I didn't look at her. I looked at Ryan, and he was looking at me, not with guilt, not with pity, but with pride. We had survived her, and now we were free. After the sentencing, Ryan and I took time away from everything, from work, from the neighborhood, even from our phones. We both needed space to breathe again, to rediscover the sound of silence, without tension, to fall asleep without the weight of someone else's drama pressing down on our chest. We rented a small cabin upstate. Nothing luxurious, just wood floors, tall trees, and the kind of quiet that makes your thoughts feel louder. The first few nights were hard. I woke up from dreams that weren't really dreams. Flashes of Janet's voice, the sound of glass, the cold marble against my skin. But each morning I felt a little stronger. Ryan and I went on long walks through the woods, sat by the fireplace, cooked simple meals together. We didn't talk much about the past, not at first. Just being present was enough. It was during one of those quiet evenings that Ryan turned to me, his voice low and shaky. "I failed you." "No," I said gently, "you didn't." I didn't stop her. I saw what she was doing for months, and still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I let her poison linger in our life because I didn't want to believe my mother was capable of it. I reached over and took his hand. "You didn't fail me. You stood by me when it mattered most. That's what counts." We began couples counseling not long after returning home. Julia recommended a therapist she trusted. It wasn't easy at first, opening up wounds that still stung. But each session brought clarity. It helped Ryan understand the emotional layers behind his loyalty to his mother, and it helped me process my own tendency to keep the peace at the cost of my own well-being. We started making small changes around the house, too. We painted the guest room, the same one where Janet planted the watch. We donated old furniture and changed the curtains. It wasn't about redecorating, it was about reclaiming the space. I began journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. I filled pages with the things I couldn't say out loud: fear, anger, grief, and then gratitude. Yes, gratitude. For the people who stood by me. For the strength I discovered in myself. The day we officially blocked Janet's number and emails was like exhaling after holding our breath for a year. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending. No more letting someone else define our marriage. Almost a year has passed since the day everything shattered. That day, when I was accused, attacked, and humiliated, once haunted me. But now, I see it for what it truly was. The moment I stopped being silent and started standing up for myself. That moment didn't break me. It transformed me. Ryan and I have grown in ways I never imagined possible. We don't tiptoe around hard conversations anymore. We talk openly, even when it's uncomfortable. We support each other without conditions. Our bond now feels like a choice we both make daily, not a habit, not an obligation, but a real, living partnership. On our second anniversary, we did something different. No guests, no speeches, no decorations. Just the two of us, a home-cooked meal, and laughter. Real laughter, the kind that doesn't hide pain. The kind that feels earned. Julia surprised us with a small gift, a framed print that read, "The strongest people aren't those who never fall, they're the ones who rise again and again." I smiled when I read it, my fingers running over the glass. She had been there for me when others looked away. Her love never wavered. Later that night, Ryan and I sat on our porch beneath a quiet sky. No drama, no tension, just stars blinking above us and the sound of crickets in the grass. "I still can't believe she's gone," he said, sipping his tea.
"She's not gone," I said.
"She's just no longer part of our story." He nodded thoughtfully. "Do you regret any of it?" I paused, thinking of everything, the pain, the betrayal, the blood, the courtroom. "No," I said, "because it led us here." He reached over and touched the side of my head gently, the spot where the scar now lived beneath my hairline. It had healed well, but it was still there, a quiet reminder. "That scar," he said, "it reminds me of how strong you are." "And it reminds me," I whispered, "never to let anyone shrink me again." We sat there for a long time, no words needed, just the knowledge that we had faced a storm and built something beautiful in its aftermath. I don't know what the future holds, no one does. But I do know this: it belongs to me now. Fully.
Fiercely.
Freely. And I'll protect it, not just for me, but for the love I fought for, the truth I spoke, and the woman I became because I refused to stay silent. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If this story touched your heart, made you feel seen, or gave you the strength to believe in your own worth, don't forget to hit the like button. Your support helps us share more powerful, real, and emotional stories that matter. Have something to say? Maybe you've experienced something similar? Leave a comment below. I read every single one, and your words matter more than you know. And if you want to hear more stories of survival, justice, and finding strength in the darkest moments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Because sometimes the stories we hear become the courage we need.